Greetings. I've been watching a lot of videos on YouTube like everybody does these days, and I was noticing a pattern in what I watch, a lot of what I watch, that hasn't to do with the pagan community or necessarily the tarot community either, but rather with some of the other communities I'm interested in. And one, there's a couple of those that I follow quite a lot. I would call some in a category of what they would be called homesteaders. And homestead. And at first I thought, well, why would I be interested in a homesteading video of any kind? Because in my mind, I'm thinking, what is a homestead? What is a homesteader? And I think of somebody, of course, historically, homesteaders were people who were able to own land by working land. They were given the opportunity to work it, and once they worked it and farmed it, whatever, it became that they held the title to the land. That was at the very beginnings of settling a lot of this part of the country. Excuse me. The homesteaders that I watch today, though, I marvel at their use of the word homestead. A lot of them are gardeners. They do have gardens. They try to practice some level of self-sufficiency, although more and more of them really don't garden, or they really don't garden much. They do a lot of digging, but they do a lot of buying their produce and things that they want to can in the grocery stores, in the big box stores too, in the stores like Costco or stores like Aldi, where they can get really low price on things. And I even see them canning. They do a lot of canning, water bath canning, pressure canning. I'm interested in, and I do that as well. But a lot of them are not. They're not trying to preserve their harvest. They are trying to just can, just to have stockpiles of food. A lot of them even buy frozen food and can that, which I don't even get that, but anyway, they do. That's okay. Anyway, then there's another category that I watch, and that has to do with gardening. There's quite a few garden channels that I'm interested in watching. I love to see tips on how to start plants, or how to grow certain things, or troubleshooting, or small space gardening, etc. And a lot of the homesteading channels, I got there that way, because some of them do offer some tips. Some of the bigger homesteads, at least, offer some tips that I can use, that I can apply to my own home. But a lot of the homesteaders ended up to really be farmers. And what I mean by farmers is, a farmer, they have vast gardens. Acres and acres of planted land, and they have cattle or sheep or goats, or, it's more than just a few backyard chickens like you. They really farm, some of them, many of them, especially now that they're on YouTube and making a lot of money apparently on YouTube. They're purchasing, all kinds of the hoop houses. Then the hoop houses came down, and they have greenhouse after greenhouse after greenhouse. They just, it's crazy. And it's just, it's becoming a big production. They're back to big production farming, which of course I'm not doing. They're very much interested in cash crop. How much they can get for what they grow, or how much that translates into how much of their families can be self-sufficient and not have to at all depend on buying anything elsewhere. And many of them grind their grains, and they purchase grind mills for grinding their own wheat, and they butcher their own animals, process their own meat, etc. And a lot of them are hunters. Gardeners, though, are a lot of them don't do any of that. A lot of them are just gardeners. They're backyard gardeners. A lot of them consider themselves hobbyists, where they just do it because they love to. Others are much more knowledgeable, of course, or they acquire a lot of knowledge that they share. But the gardeners today that we watch are not the gardeners that we grew up with, or I grew up with when I was a child. My father, everybody, all the neighbors, everybody that I knew had gardens of some kind in the town where I grew up. Even my grandmother, when she moved from her home after my grandfather's death, moved into an apartment dwelling, shared house dwelling, etc., small town in the town within the borough, lots. She always managed to have a flower bed with full of, some tomato plants stuck in her flower beds, maybe a bean plant or two, or those kind of things. And my mother, and father did have a summer vegetable garden every year. They did some tomatoes and beans and peas and just a few odds and ends of things like that, maybe some sweet peppers. And my mother did manage to can some of the excess, but there wasn't a lot of excess. It was a small garden. But my father spent a lot of time gardening, and as did the other men around the neighborhood, mostly men, some women. But it seemed that the gardens they were interested in is what a lot of people today, even in the suburbs here where I live, or the cities where I live, I don't know if I'm a suburb or city. I guess I'm a city, but I don't know. It's just all one big blur here. Where one starts, the next begins. But it looks sort of more like a suburb than a city to me. But anyway, they're interested in their lawns. People are interested in their lawns, their landscaping, their bushes, their shrubs, their flowers. Vegetables used to be in the backyard if we had them at all. We're very brave. We have ours in the front, to the chagrin of some of our neighbors. They do not like that. But we do anyway. That's where we have the best sun and the best land for gardening. But their gardening is with just the beauty and what they can share with those surrounding them. It's not really about feeding their family. Now, granted, what makes me interested in being a gardener? I consider myself a gardener. I'm not a farmer. I'm not a homesteader. And I don't even consider myself a hobbyist, really, because I take my gardening very seriously. My husband and I take it very seriously. We try to produce as much things in our garden to sustain us as much as we can during the year. Not that we don't want to, it's not just because we don't want to purchase or we don't have it available to us, produce, because here, especially in Southern California, well, pretty much anywhere in the United States, but Southern California specifically, any time of the year, you can get fresh produce at the grocery store. You might not be able to get everything all year absolutely locally grown, but we have, for some of us, bringing it from Mexico is almost the same as locally grown. It's not that we can't get good produce. It's not that we can't get it from the farmer's market or whatever. But there is something very satisfying to us of planting seeds and tending the seeds and the plants and having the fruits of our labor to enjoy. Okay, so we have this, it is a part of us. We have a part of us, and we're both practicing witches, and we both really enjoy that experience that we have in the communication that we have with the earth. And the seasons and the wheel of the year and etc. There are two things in my heart as a gardener that I want to share today. Two ideas that I'm as I'm puttering around doing my daily chores, because I want to say this time of the year, even though it's still winter, not quite even we haven't even quite gotten to the equinox yet. Yet. We're almost there where it's going to be spring. Just in the last winter months here, we're still very much into a preservation mode here in our home, in our little garden. In our little garden, we have winter plants that we are harvesting, that we have grown, and that we're harvesting and trying to preserve what we can for that. And there's two different things that go through our minds every time we plant anything in the garden. Number one is the idea that we must sacrifice some things in order to make room for new things or whatever. We have to get the winter garden, for instance, out of the way, as an example. I have broccoli come out my ears. And I'm harvesting it as fast as we can. We'll harvest it and use it. And once the broccoli is finished, the broccoli will be removed and making room for something for the summer garden, which we want to get planted soon. And same thing with the cabbages. I have cabbages growing. I have little heads. I need them to get nice big heads. Then they will be harvested, and I will be making room for what needs to go next. And there have been times where I've had to pull something. I've had to pull something out of the garden to make room because it was time for something to go in. And that's the truth here. If I had something, my tomato plants, which I am growing from seed under grow lights in the house until it gets warm enough to plant them out, once it is time that I can't keep them inside any longer, they need to go in the garden, and whatever's in their way is going to be moved. That's a sacrifice that we make as gardeners. We make those decisions. Okay. The other thing that is in my heart very much as a gardener is the thought that I have a desire to use every bit of what we have, what we grow, every bit. I don't want to waste it. I have in the past sometimes, and been heartsick about it, wasted it. I have had so many tomatoes, and I've gone away, and I knew I was going to go away, and I still had all these tomatoes to harvest that I never got to, and when I came back, they were rotting on the vine, or they were falling down on the ground below the plants rotting, or I put them in a bowl and they were rotting on my counter, until I realized I could stick them in the freezer and process them later. Whatever. I learned these things over time. But we want to use every bit of it. We put a lot of work into the garden. But not just that we want to not waste it. It's not all about waste. It's about want. And I'll tell you, there's nothing like the taste of a fresh tomato that you've grown in your garden. There's nothing like it. Heirloom tomatoes particularly, there's just, some of them have the most wonderful, wonderful taste. And every year I look forward to that because I do make wonderful things out of the tomatoes. I make sauces, and I make, salsas. And sometimes I blend them all together. Like every year I have something that's like the taste of 2020 or 2021 or 2019. What did my garden taste like in 2019? Now, unfortunately, we had a really bad, I have to say, unfortunately, we had a very bad tomato year last year, and I didn't get a whole lot of things canned. But I do have some in the freezer yet to process. But I have salsa that I processed. The salsa, I called it Garden-Waz Salsa 2020 because it was like Jamie Oliver says, waz it up, put it in a blender and give it a waz. But I did all different kinds of tomatoes that were what I had every kind of tomato I had. I would put together in a salsa, and that's what my garden tastes like in 2020. Fortunately, I still have pizza sauce from 2019. That was the same thing, garden pizza sauce made out of the taste of my tomatoes in 2018. They have very distinct taste from year to year, and it's very interesting to taste them. So it's about taking that taste and being able to enjoy that taste in times to come. In times to come. I'm going to just show you, I have few clips here that I show you, doing a few little things. I don't want to take a lot of time, but you don't have to watch. If it's too much, I have people complaining to me that my videos are too long. You know how to stop it and come back later, or stop it and leave. I'm not forcing you to watch. But a lot of you have expressed that you'd like to come along on my day sometimes and just see some of the things I'm doing. So I thought you might like to do that today because I'm very much involved in gardening projects that are projects around my kitchen that are related to my garden. So let me share a few things like that with you now. A little bit earlier today, I had my husband pick some of these. This is the wood sorrel blossoms, and as you can see, what happens to them, you can see they all look pretty much like they're closing, because they are. What happens? Here's one that has not. When they come out of the sun, like when it's a cloudy day or an overcast day or in the nighttime, they close up their little petals, and some really tighten. And I have a combination here because I have some that are not yet opening. They're on the verge of opening. Some pods. Here we go. This one is closing. Oh wait, this one is closing. And these down here are just little pods that are just preparing. This one is just the very tip. You probably can't see that, but it's the very tip that's just trying to start to open. If we hadn't picked it, that would maybe open in the next day or two. But I knew that we were going to we're anticipating some overcast days and some rain, potentially some rain over the next couple of days. So I wanted to take the opportunity to use up some of these flowers today, because I've said numerous times that the wood sorrel here in Southern California, particularly where I am, has a very short productive life. It really could. Its potential to last throughout a lot of the summer, it tends to, here on our property at least, really die off once it gets hot. It doesn't like the hot weather. It gets too dry. Here's one that's still really open. Okay, so I had about 2 cups of these flowers. There's a few leaves in here. Here's a beautiful, you see how heart-shaped, this is the leaf without the, how cute that is, without the, any stem on it, but see, just picked that accidentally. But how much like little hearts these leaves look. They're so adorable. I love them. But anyway, I had about all told 2 cups at least. So what I'm going to do is I want to preserve these, and I'm going to make a tisane. I'm going to make a tisane, which is simply an herbal tea, a tea made from herbs rather than made from tea leaves. That's what a tisane is. And I want to make that because I want to brew this tea or tisane, have it steep. So I put it here in this Pyrex pitcher, and I'm going to fill it pretty much with water because I want to make this tisane. I boil the kettle, let this steep till tomorrow because I want to make a jelly. Make a jelly. And by filling this up, I know I'm going to have at least enough liquid to make a nice jelly with. Okay? Already, I don't think you can tell. I think the light is not real good for that, but already the liquid is taking on a bit of a greenish, yellowish tinge to it. So that's just going to be sitting. I'm going to just set that aside, cover it up a little bit loosely with a towel or something to keep everybody out of it. And that's going to brew until tomorrow, or steep until tomorrow, where I will drain that, and then I will use that liquid to make a wood sorrel blossom jelly, okay? Which should be delicious. I don't know. I've never had it as a jelly. But I imagine it's going to be a little lemony. Let me set this aside. Okay. Because I've never made that before, but I have made other, of course, jellies. I make jellies and jams all the time. And I wanted to show you one particular one that we're talking about today. Interesting. This is a Nasturtium jelly. And it looks really dark. I apologize for the darkness, for the light in here. I can't really show. It's just not, but it's really a beautiful golden amber color. It's not brown at all. And I'm not sure, this is my confession, I'm a little bit of a sloppy housekeeper. I don't know exactly what recipe I used for this. I wasn't real specific in my labeling. Well, I don't want to point fingers, but this is not my handwriting. This is my husband's handwriting. But I think he just puts on the jar what I tell him to put on the jar. Anyway, so I'm going to open this up because I'm curious. I'm going to give this a little taste to see if I can identify the what recipe I might have used for this, because I use different recipes all the time. And so I have a little saltine here I'm going to just put on there. Maybe you'll be able to see a better color. Oh, maybe you can see that now. Such a nice color. Can you see that amber color? There you see how pretty it looks. Just beautiful, like a beautiful good golden amber. Let me taste. This is nasturtium, by the way, nasturtium. Nasturtium blossom. Nasturtium blossom. It's very delicious. It tastes a little bit like honey. I'm going to say, make a guess, that I used the recipe for this that did not, let me try it. It did not, that had apple juice, a little bit of apple juice rather than water. So the nasturtium blossoms, I believe, were steeped in apple juice. Rather than water. I did make just a tisane of the nasturtium flower. It doesn't taste like apple, but it does not taste like exactly like nasturtium blossom. I don't think. The wood sorrel jelly that I hope to make, I'm only going to use the wood sorrel flavoring. That is the only flavor that's going to be in it. It will be the tisane made from the wood sorrel, and it will be sugar, of course, which is necessary in the process, the jelly process. It will have, of course, pectin, a little bit of lemon juice, which is true of all jellies and jams, I believe. I'm real curious to see what that's going to taste like. So after I make that, I'll share that with you. But what I want to say is, adding something like an apple juice is a good way to extend the flavor. I also said if you don't have a lot of the flavor, or you want to sample the flavor, you want to preserve the flavor, but you don't want it to be the only flavor. For instance, I'll give you an example, is lavender. I grow beautiful lavender in my garden. It grows all year here. It's a perennial. I've got a huge lavender bush in the back. The bees go nuts over it. But if you ever had lavender in cooking, you will realize that lavender is a very floral, especially it's a very floral taste, and it's not the best on its own. So what I do is I always combine it with other things, and this is strawberry lavender made with my strawberries and lavender. I also do put sometimes lavender in a berry, in a blueberry. So it's just a little touch of the lavender in with the strawberry, enough so that you get the note of lavender, but not too much so it's not too floral. You can do the same thing with rose petals. You can add a little bit of rose to that, to your jam, and you can get that little flavor of roses. And the third thing I want to show you is I always make marmalades. I make marmalade all the time. We have orange tree that's always covered with oranges, but you know that I also have other citruses in my garden. In my yard, I have orange. Besides the orange, I have a lime, and I have a lemon, and I have a lemon grapefruit combination, whatever it is, a salad tree, I guess it's called. So I have lots of citrus always on hand. So this year, instead of just making the orange marmalade, which I make all the time, I made a 3 citrus. So this is 3 citruses, not 4, but this is the taste, preserving the taste of my oranges, my lemons, and my grapefruit together in one marmalade, which is really delicious. Okay, so you can take a little bit of that flavor that you're trying to preserve and extend it a little more by adding it to other things, but still enjoying the flavor. I thought to get a box of the pectin out to show you. This is available at every grocery store. This is just one kind. This is kind that makes, I'm using sugar. But inside these pectin, this is a powdered form. There's a couple of different kinds of pectin. There's liquid. There's also something, pomona pectin I use, which you can use very low sugar recipes. It works really well. But what I wanted to show you about this kind, the shore gel pectin, available everywhere. It's very easy to obtain. And inside every box comes a recipe sheet with recipes for jams and jellies on both sides. And it's just simple little recipes that are basically formulas for doing jams and jellies. And I wanted to say that I showed you, I made the tisane, the tea for those who were using fresh flowers, fresh wood sorrel flowers. And here under, on one side of this, where it has cooked jelly directions as the heading. There's cooked jelly recipes following. And down here on the list, it offers all different kinds of fruit jelly. But down here on the list, it includes mint jelly, which uses fresh mint leaves. And this is a formula that you can use any kind of, if you want to use nasturtium leaves, or you want to use, basil leaves, or you want to use, in our case, we're using the flower from the wood sorrel. It can be applied. So what we did was made a tisane, or that they're calling it a prepared infusion, which is the same thing as what we did, just taking the leaves and adding water over top of it, boiling it, and then letting that stand. And to make, mint is very strong, so you just let it stand for a very short time. But because our leaves are more delicately, our flowers are more delicately, they're more flavored, whatever flowers are, we're going to let it sit overnight, so at least overnight, maybe longer, before we are ready to use it in the recipe. But they basically have just a combination of, they're using 4 cups of that tea, or tisane, or infusion, to 5 cups of sugar. That's what their formula has. I had one that used 5 cups of tea to 5 cups of sugar, or one that had 4 cups and 4 cups. So it's basically just the ratio. It's very close. It doesn't have to matter too much what your ratio is. It's almost equal or not. And then it has a little bit of, it has you add just the sugar, and then you follow instructions, you add that, you add the pectin, and that's just about all you need, really, in it. And it's very simple to do. So my point is, you don't have to worry about finding a recipe for your exact, whatever your herb or flower is that you want to preserve. Just absolutely make sure that it is something that is edible and safe to eat. If you want to do this, don't just pick it. Do some research. Just put it in the Google search thing, and you'll be able to find very easily if it's something you can do. Okay, so anyway, that's what I want to show you. Now, what I'm going to do, that was using the fresh flowers. Now, what other thing I'm going to be doing today is, I think I might have mentioned before when we were talking about nasturtiums, that I really like to make my tinctures using the dried leaves of the nasturtium, because I think, rather than fresh, I think taking some of that moisture out of the leaf helps make the infusion a little bit stronger. And I think the same goes for most things that we want to make flavor-wise. And I'd be very curious to see making jelly out of the dried, making a tisane using dried flowers at some point to make the jelly, with that, how that changes the flavor. Okay, but anyway, what I want to do this time is do a couple more things with nasturtium flowers. And I want to show you the nasturtium flowers. I often, or I have in the past, or you will see me using a dehydrator to dehydrate vegetables and dehydrate flowers and things. And these are nasturtium flowers that I dehydrated using a dehydrator, my little machine. You can also do that in the oven if you want to. But what I want to show you today, and I'm going to be using these in a recipe in a minute, but what I wanted to show you in this jar, I don't know if you can see the difference, how glorious these are. These are nasturtium flowers as well, but these are so they're so glorious. You can almost still see the flower. The flowers, in some cases, haven't even really closed up or dried out too much. When I look down at my jar, some of them are really easy to see. The flower is nearly intact. I mean, of course it's not. But it is just the sweetest, sweetest smell. And these were air dried. These were air dried. I put just like racks, pans in a rack with some paper towels on the rack. Spread them out in my guest room in a room where nobody was going to be. I think we even put them on the bed. And just laid out my dried flower, my fresh flowers all over their blossoms. Didn't stack them, just laid them beside each other. And left them there for, I don't know, they were there weeks. They were there probably for weeks in that room to dry. And when they were done, They are just, there's so much, I mean, I can use them the same. These can be used the same, but they're just such a difference. These are just almost shriveled up crumbs of the flower. These are just the most beautiful, beautiful, and the colors have remained so vibrant that I just wanted to share that. But I'm going to be doing something with these real simple things that I will tell you about. I'm not going to do it in front of you because I don't want to take a long time. I want to show you a few other things. I have a lot going on today. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to be making, let's see. I'm going to be making a hot sauce. I'm going to use out of nasturtiums, out of the blossoms, which is amazing to me because I do make hot sauce all the time out of dried chilies, and I dry my peppers, my hot peppers. These are serranos that I dried from years ago. I don't know how many years. I do them every year, but these, I think in this bottle, they're pretty old. I'm not sure, at least several years old. But they're glorious. And I do nothing to these. I do nothing to these. You know. As you see, the stem is still attached. You might be able to see. If you can. The stem is, I see people doing that all the time. Does that work? I don't know. But the stem is still attached. And I just lay the seeds and everything are in there. I just lay it right in the, I just keep them in a bowl or on a plate or something on the counter. And they air dry after a while. And then when they're dry, I just store them in a jar. And when I go to use it, if I want them hydrated, like my husband made guacamole yesterday for dinner. He just took a couple out and put the hot water over them for 10 minutes and then dry them off and chop them up and put them in the guacamole. And it was beautiful. But anyway, I'm going to be making a hot sauce. I make hot sauces all the time out of serranos and fresnos and jalapenos, and I make both green and red hot sauces that I don't even buy hot sauce anymore. That's what we use. But I thought, oh, nasturtium hot sauce sounds really interesting. All I need for that is a quart jar, empty quart jar. I have 2 cups of nasturtium flowers, dried nasturtium flowers, a couple cloves of garlic, smashed, and about 6 of these babies. And I'm going to put it in this jar with, fill it up with, guess what? Apple cider vinegar that I made. Remember when I made that last year? Oh, we've been using this. This bottle is just about gone. I have some in here. And it has made a mother. It makes new mother all the time. It's really delicious. It's really good. I use it for everything. Out of my peels and my cores and apple. But anyway, and then I just let this sit. Shake it every day for a week or so, and then strain it. And then it'll just keep in the cupboard for months, as long as you keep it out of the light. Just you don't even have to refrigerate or anything. So now I'm going to try that using my dried chilies, my dried nasturtium flowers, my homemade apple cider vinegar. And then I'm going to make, I can't wait for this because it's almost time. Tomorrow I get my 2nd vaccine. So pretty soon, I'm going to be able to see my children and my family. We're going to get together. It's going to be so wonderful. And so I'm preparing for the day. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make nasturtium vodka. Vodka for cocktails for this summer. I'm sure we'll get together. And I have, to do that, vodka of the gods. Because I love it. It's pagan, and I love Trader Joe's, and I love the label, and if it ever changes, I don't know what I'm going to use. Because it's just mediocre vodka. But it just makes me happy. For some reason, it makes me really happy. But anyway, vodka, again, quart jar. And for every cup of vodka, I'm going to use 10 or 12 flowers in here. And that's it. And I just shake it daily for about what's it say? About 3 weeks. And then I will strain those flowers out of it, and then that's ready to go. And it says if you mix that with, you can use it for any time you make a martini. I mean, for a martini you can use it, but we don't really drink martinis. But one way I thought we'd be interested, serve it with lime and tonic or sparkling water, you know, fizzy water, and some fresh lime, which I have a tree, and garnish with a fresh flower. And guess what they're calling it? It's a nasty lime sparkle. Nasty lime sparkle, get it? Nasturtium, nasty. Oh, I thought that was funny. Anyway, I'm going to try that. So I'm going to try infusing my vodka, because I've infused vodka in the past. You know, for my grapefruit jalapeno margarita, I infused vodka with jalapeno, and that's one of our favorite drinks in the summer. Very refreshing. Very refreshing. So anyway, that's what I'm going to be doing, and I'll share with those later. I don't want to do it in front of the camera because why? You don't need to see all that. You just don't need to see all that. Okay. But I'm going to show you some other things I'm doing. So stay tuned. I'm here doing some odds and ends, little gardening chores for my seedlings that I have started under my grow lights. And some of them need some kind of attention. I started a lot of seeds in either little pots or little cells. These kind of cells that are that expand when you add water. As you can see, I have this one here because this one, the roots are starting to extend. This is why I like these little expandable things, because you can start to see the roots coming through. When I see the roots coming through, it either has to go in the ground or it has to be potted up, what we call potted into a larger container, which is what I'm going to do with these today. The reason I like these little pods, is because if you plant it in a pot like this to begin with, you can't tell when it's root bound. It's harder to tell when it's root bound if you plant it in something like this. And some things hate to be root bound. For instance, something like a pepper. If it stays too long in a pot before it's time to be planted, it stunts its growth. And it's way too cold. Yeah, it is as warm as it can be here. It's way too cold right now. Nights down into the 40s for peppers or tomatoes to be planted outside. So I'm going to be potting a few of these things up today. But before I do that, I wanted to show you a few other things. I have a little bit of an emergency here with the Tomatillo. This is I hope you can see. My camera's not real great. Camera's not real good there. But anyway, the Tomatillo, this is one that I potted up, maybe last week. And first of all, for some reason, I think I planted this one, it's falling over, and I can see some roots exposed here, like it wants to lay down. It looks pretty healthy. And I planted my tomatillos kind of deep, like I plant tomato plants. When I repot them, I plant them a little deeper to develop more roots. They have a lot of hairs along the root stem, and I know how to get this in better frame. How about if I switch? If I switch it there maybe you can see it better. There you go. Okay, see, it's flopping over, and I want to get it to lie down. It has a lot of hairs along the stem here, so it's able to develop roots along that stem. So when I potted it a little deep, for some reason it wants to flop over. So I have a little skewer here, a wooden skewer, and I'm going to use that just like I would use a tomato steak. And I'm going to stick this in, down in, try to give it a little bit of support to get it to grow straight up if I can. Give it a little bit of support. It needs a little water before I put it back up over my lights, under my lights. Tomatillos are something that I've had trouble with in the past, not wanting to grow. So I'm really trying to baby them along this time, which is funny because most people say, oh, they grow like weeds. Well, they grow like weeds everywhere but in my yard, in my garden. I want to show you something else. I have a little still another seed that is trying to grow up here, which there's not going to be room. I left 2 in here because I really want to grow the tomatillos. So, but this one, I'm just going to snip that off. That has to be sacrificed in order to make room. Because when that gets bigger, it's going to encumber my space. Now, if this was a little stouter, I might be able to put a little tie around that. I still might do that. I don't want to tie it maybe loosely. Maybe if I had a little piece of yarn, a little tiny piece of yarn or string, I could tie something really loosely here. Not sure. I'll put that wish out to the universe and see what happens. Jute? Yeah, jute would work. A little bit of jute. Just short enough that I can tie just really loosely until this is gonna. Anyway, I had to. Also, as you can see here, these are just flower seeds that I put in this little cell, and I planted a whole lot. Look how many came up in the little pot. So I'm gonna have to cut some of those out to make room. Then by the time, now they're going to be fighting for. They're going to be fighting for space. So I'm just going to snip some of those out, if I can. It's going to be kind of hard to do it, but actually it might be easier at this point to pull some of them. Maybe. To make room. You shouldn't pull them because you're disturbing the soil, but I don't have much choice until I can see what I'm doing. So maybe just carefully snipping some of those out. It's going to grow kind of like a little carpet, but I don't need it quite so thick. If I can't get air in there, it's not going to grow at all. So I just want to make sure nothing's real tight together. Oh, my wish came true. Thank you. So I'm just going to really tie this really loosely and see what happens. I'm not going to tie it. It has to be able to it has to be able to go. I'm just see that's very loose. The object is I just want to get this I want to grow it get it to grow as straight as it can. So it's so loose. There's plenty of room to grow up. All right. Now I pulled some of these out. I don't want to pull too many of them out until I see them get a little bit more size. But normally I would just snip them, but it's so hard to see in that little, in this tiny little space. There we go. I want to get air in there. If I don't have enough air in there, it's going to get a disease. Easier get a disease. We don't want that. Okay, so anyway, I'm just going to pot up a few of these. That's better. And then that needs a little bit of water before it goes back in. Most of the time these get water from the bottom. But for right now, I'll just give it a little drink. All right, now I have these two pot up. And I can just show you a few minutes how I do that if you want to see. Let's start with this tomatillo. This is a tomatillo, and I have 2 in here, and it normally should only be 1, but I really want it to grow. I'm giving it every chance I can. So I'm going to take a 4-inch pot, and as you can see, it's not much bigger. I'm not going to really be able to pot it up again. It's already been potted deep once from the original cell. So I'm just going to put it in, pull that out, and I'll put that back in. The importance about using these little packs, or these have to be removed. They're supposed to be biodegradable, but they absolutely do not degrade soon enough for me. So I'm going to pull that off. That will go in my compost bin. And before that goes in there, I'm going to put a little bit of soil in the bottom here. Just to give it something to sit on. And my soil's a little dry, but I have all of this. I'm going to just take the little bottom off of it so it sits a little bit deeper. So it can sit up on that bed of that little bed of soil that I put in there. Get a nice firm sit. And now I can get some dirt around it and get it nice, just sit nice and secure. And this way, you see, I'm really not disturbing it at all. A little bit off the bottom, didn't hurt anything. Nice and fresh. This is just a basic potting soil. Because eventually these are going to be going into my raised beds in the front garden. I think. If I don't have room already full. My husband will say, I don't have any more room. He always cringes when I start all these seeds because I have a lot of seeds on that table, a lot of little seedlings. Okay, that's it. It's nice little, give it a little, put the tag back in so I know what it is. Give it a little bit of a drink. And if it has holes in it, it'll drip out the bottom, but it's my experience that those are not the most. These don't, once they get, I like to water these from the bottom, these little cells, but once they get into a pot, I don't know how to do that. It doesn't seem to work. So those two I'm going to move back in out of the way so they do not get bothered. If I can trust, I have somebody sitting over here on the sofa watching me very intently, and I want to say, those of you that have cats, this is our reality. These are my pea seeds that we just put in yesterday, some of these seeds. And I had some left that I was going to save. Just put this on the table here overnight, and this is what happened. No, it's not mice, not insects or rodents. And my dog is trying to go through my tripod. Get out of there. Leave it. Leave it. Leave it. Bayan. Go see Joe. Where's Joe? Go find Joe.
Where?
I don't know. My life is complicated. Anyway, somebody, this is life with cats. Chewed through the plastic. So I have to try to bury that. Put it in something else. Normally that is kept inside a little tin. But overnight, you know, in your hurry, throw them on the table. Lessons learned. Okay, so anyway, the rest of these I'm just going to simply pot over the same way. But I wanted to show you one more before I quit, because you don't need to see me plant up all of these. This tomatillo simply needs planted. This is an eggplant. Two in there. I only really need one, but I'm going to let it go a little further because there's room. They're plenty spaced apart, and see if I can see what I get out of it. These are really two wonderful California Wonder peppers, which again, peppers, it's an emergency to repot, but these are healthy. We might be able to get two. We're going to see what happens when it grows up, so I'm going to let them be two. But this one you can see is a Black Beauty eggplant. And in this one, there are three. And that's just too small of a space for three. Even in this little pot where I put them in the pot. Even when I transferred to this pot, I think three is too many. So one of them has to be, yes, sacrificed. And that's what we do. That's just the reality of gardening. It looks so healthy. Now I could try to take that over and put it in a pot all its own, one of them, but in all honesty, how many eggplant plants do I need, can I use? I have, this is not my only one too, I have several. So, and already I will have 3. So I just have to randomly decide who wants to go. And it's going to be the smallest. Because they're all, well wait, this one's a little closer. This one's closer. No, it's going to be the smallest. So I just snip it off rather than pull it. Because again, I don't want to disturb the soil that's in here. And this one, as I was trying to take the case off, it broke in half, which they do. That's okay. That's okay. The roots are still pretty much up here. So I can break that up and use it in my mix. So let me get a little bit of soil on the bottom. Move that out of the way. I have everything right up against me here because cats are on the prowl today. Let me get a little more soil. My cats are up to no good today. There we go. Okay. And again, I'm just going to pack some soil around the edges. I'm sure my habits are making some of you cringe. Some of you. People that I know, there's a lot better gardeners out there than I am, but I try. I have to do it my way. You do it your way. I'll do it my way. That's how we learn. I wanted to be sure that sits well in there. There we go. That looks pretty good. I have to put a little more dirt than I think I need in there around the edges because it's dry. And once I wet it, it's going to compact a little more. And the tag, Back Beauty, all tucked in some water. And there we go. Ready to go under the lights. We grow broccoli this time of the year in the garden and cabbage. Among other things, some, kale and Swiss chard, etc. But the cabbage and broccoli in particular that we grow are kind of short-lived in the garden. The cabbage, first of all, we grow till the heads are sizable. When there's about when they're ready to pick, they're harvested, and then the whole plant is removed and made room in the beds for the summer crop to go in. I usually make sauerkraut out of what's there. I might do some other pickling. I think I might do some other pickling with some of it this year. So when it's ready, I'll share that if you're interested. But one thing that we grow a lot of and we have to protect with our life is broccoli. Of course, this is a cold weather crop here in California, and this was picked yesterday actually, or the day before. It's been in the refrigerator for a couple of days. Because I've been working away. I've had a couple heads of broccoli. Broccoli is a little different. That when you cut the head, this was the major head of it, and we cut it. But then the other parts of the plant send up little tiny heads all over the plant. Rather than getting another usually big head we don't normally get, but we get lots of these. And of course the leaves of the broccoli are absolutely edible, as are the flowers. Now the flowers are not something that we want because the flowers, once the broccoli flowers, it's done growing. It's not going to grow any more heads or florets or whatever. But and this is what happened to me the other day. We had to pick some broccoli. One head was really ready to pick, This one was just starting to loosen. Um, there's no flowers on it, visible flowers on it yet, but it wasn't tight. When I picked the other ones, they were tight like this. Like if you get almost like cauliflower, nice and tight. But as it starts to loosen up this way, these little florets will loosen up and start to open up a little bit. And then the flowers we start, and I see one flower, the tiniest flowers, so tiny, I know they don't even show up on camera, but little tiny, tiny, tiny flowers that might be ready to start to form on this one. I had to get it cut. I had to get it out of there. But what I wanted to tell you, this broccoli in the garden is so absolutely, as most things are when you grow them, the taste is unbelievable compared to what you would get in the grocery store. Not that that's not good, and you can get really good broccoli at the farmer's market, of course, but other sources. But just coming out of the garden, just fresh, is so, the flavor of the broccoli is so intense. I think after they're cut a long time and stored and shipped, whatever, they kind of lose some of that intense flavor. So I really wanted to preserve that flavor as much as I could after the broccoli season is finished and the broccoli plants come out, and I put some tomatoes in there or whatever's going to go in there next. So I'm trying to preserve it. Now, I don't can broccoli. I don't know that anybody cans broccoli. That sounds disgusting to me. I know a lot of people freeze broccoli. But, my husband and I were talking about it, and we don't really enjoy, when you freeze something, it's going to soften it when you thaw it to use it or to cook it. It's already kind of soft. And how do we use broccoli? We use a lot of fresh broccoli in this house all year. We buy it as much as we can. We love it. We love it just raw, eating raw, like with, crudité, as a crudité, for instance. We love eating it in salads. We also love broccoli salad, which we make quite often with, with some nuts and usually some kind of dried fruit in with it. We also sometimes eat it, broccoli is something we eat. Our broccoli casserole is, Bobby's Aunt Connie's broccoli casserole has been a tradition in our family on the Thanksgiving table since the children were small, which is just like a gratin of broccoli, I suppose, with some stuffing, crumb mixture, whatever on the top. It's really good, but it's, really rich. But also my husband and I were talking about it. We thought we eat so much stir fry, etc. But that, like Szechuan shrimp or whatever, or just like a plain stir fry of some kind, but we need fresh broccoli for that. So what are we going to use as prepared? What are we going to use frozen broccoli for? We didn't want to just freeze the broccoli stalks, which you can buy in the grocery, in the frozen section. We could blanch these and freeze them and then, steam them or whatever when we want to eat them. But that's just not the way we like to eat broccoli. We enjoy cooked broccoli in something. If it's going to be cooked, it should be in something like the broccoli casserole or whatever. And I've seen some people freezing like a chicken divan kind of a casserole. It is basically chicken and parboiled or steamed broccoli and like a cheese sauce. Like a lot of people use like cream of mushroom or cream of chicken soup and sour cream and mayonnaise, and oh goodness, there's so many different things on on YouTube that you can find recipes. But we like things that are a little bit lighter. And I came across a recipe that was a Curtis Stone, Chef Curtis Stone, an Australian chef. He shared on, I think, with Rachel Ray once on a show. It was on YouTube, and I thought that looked really good. He used chicken and broccoli, and he made his own little, like a light Mornay sauce, perhaps, something like that. And he included mushrooms. So we thought, oh, we like that. So I'm going to make some freezer meals to try to save that. And I wanted to show you something though that I did the other day. I didn't have a chance to share with you today, but I made some broccoli cheese soup we had the other night because I did have one head that completely opened up, and all these opened, and it was flowers all over the top. So there was a lot of flowers and there was a lot of thick stalk and leaves on all the stalks, and these are still relatively tender, the stalks on here. But the stalks on that were that thick stalk that usually ends up in the compost. Well, it didn't end up in the compost the other day because I made a broccoli cheese soup out of these head of broccoli and all the stalks by peeling the stalk, which is very easily done. People do it all the time. Of course, people make it look really easily the way they do it, but I just thought I would show you what we mean by peeling the stalk and why we would want to. Let me put this over on my board. I just want to cut this apart a little bit first, cut off some of the most tender, the little parts first, and just try to get to the stalk so I can show you quickly. I don't want to take a lot of time doing this, but I did want to get to a part where I could share. The stalk, I might have taken off too much there to show you. Maybe I need a straighter one. This one might be better to show because it has to show on camera. I would just pull these leaves off because they're kind of wilted. But anyway, by the way, the soup that I made was, I used leaves, I used stem, I used the peeled stem, I used the florets, of course. That was the best soup I ever made. And I made, 3 or 4 quarts of it. And I have a lot of it in the freezer for future meals for us. So that was really lovely. So anyway, when I go to use, I have some pans here to, when I go to the broccoli, I would cut, when I start with the broccoli, I would just cut off, the florets, and I would split them up any way I can. Like some of them are big, they can stand the meal, big, small, and I just cut them apart into bite-sized pieces. Okay, just the florets, and then I'm left, by the time I get down here, I'm left to the stalk. And if I want to, I can pull these little leaves off of here. Cut these little bumps off, if you can see me doing that. Anyway, then I want to get this, when you cut it, if you sort of almost are sloppy with the way you cut it, which I've sort of hacked that off, you might be able to see the fibers that are running, vertical fibers in this, up and down the stalk, that I'm able to just take that and peel that off. Do you see how that is? This is the part with these fibers in it that's very, very chewy. Have you ever bit into broccoli and you say, oh, that's so chewy, I can't even. Well, look, when I pull on it, it's hard even to break. Okay, so this is not something I would want to eat. That goes to my chickens, or it goes into the compost pile. But what is left, there's another one. I just start to peel it off. And look, you can even see there, you might be able to see how the fibers are pulling. You see these strings? Those are the fibers. If you ever cut off the end of a celery stalk, you cut off the end of a celery stalk and you pull, sometimes, especially if it's an older celery that's grown a long time, when you pull it off, you get all those strings. It's the same principle here with the broccoli. And then what you're left with, you can almost see, I know you can't see in my light, but you can almost see where the stalk, where the heavy, tough exterior remains and where the broccoli is underneath. This underneath is very tender. It is the exact flavor of the broccoli florets without that tough fiber to try to bite or chew. It's just not, that doesn't. So I just continue and I work at it. It takes a little while. You have to be patient. This is a job you probably want to do sitting down. Let me get these off of here. But then when you go to cut into and I'll just use my paring knife rather than my big knife. When I go to cut into the stem, then it's really kind of tender. Now this is the other trick. When you go to cut it, instead of cutting it through, be a little sloppy about it and leave it, because then I can pull and I see some more fibers left. If you could see that, I don't know. But there's some strings left on there that I just have to then pull off. And then you have delicious broccoli. I'm always amazed by this because, seriously, if you were to buy broccoli, frozen broccoli, to get the florets is expensive. To get the stems and pieces, or broccoli pieces that includes the stems, is much cheaper usually. And when I think about how much work they go into to make sure they get, that the stems are not fibrous. But anyway, then this can be cooked just along with the florets, and it's the same, okay? Exactly the same. So that's what I just want to show you that. And here again, I'm going to go a little sloppy. And you see the strings hanging? Do you see all these little strings? So I'm just going to take my knife and tug at them, and there they come. Now when it's this color green, and it's not real dark green, like a thicker stalk, like my stalk was the other day, this is a little more tender. So this is easy. You can chew that. That's not. And if you ever question it, well, take it off. If you're thinking, I wonder, did I get that good enough? Cut off a little piece, put it in your mouth, and chew it, and see what happens. It tastes just like chewing in one of these. Not too chewy at all. Okay? So I would just continue taking these strings off. The trickiest part about this is, in between on here is where it gets. And it's hard to get all those off as it goes in here. That's why I like to cut it. And as you cut it, you might say, oh, well, you know, look, I could have cut that some more. But other than that, there you go. Now a thicker one, like this, if it were thick green, this is a little thicker. A little darker green, you might be able to see it. You could almost see where it remains. Let me cut some of this off. This I'm going to all chop up for my dish, but I just want to show you. But this, I just try to get a place where I can get my knife under it. Just some place that I can get my knife under it and then pull it. And look at all that come off. You see that? That's one of the reasons I wanted to get the leaves off. But see, I can see it. I can see that sitting on there. Okay. So you just peel it the very best you can, and then when you go to cut it, if it needed peeling more, if it needed more peeling, you're going to find it. See, when I cut it short, now I can see very easily and get to it. All these strings that have to come off. It's not necessarily strings that have to come off, but that's a clue as to what you want to grab hold of. It's the it's this other outer layer, which if you ever weren't sure, take a piece of this and parboil it. And when you boil it, this is going to remain, the center is going to remain light green, and the outside, or freeze it, you can see it if you've ever frozen it. The outside remains really dark, and that just, you can see right away where that needs to be peeled off. Okay, I think I have it all over here. You can just peel it a little bit, scrape it a little bit with your knife where you see it. Okay? Now, most of this is not going to require as much work as I put into this, but here, these ones with the darker green, real dark green in there, this is going to have a tough overlay, outer layer on it. see, it's gonna pull right off. Okay, it's as simple as that. So anyway, this is gonna give me a really beautiful, intense flavor of the broccoli using all of it. And when I put it into my casserole in the freezer, it's gonna be all ready to just pop out of the freezer someday. Put it in the oven, frozen, bake it for a while with the cover on, aluminum foil over the top, and then uncover it, and it's gonna be ready to go. It's gonna be like an instant meal. Like takeout, take out of my freezer. Okay. Well, that's my day. I finished up some of the things that I said I was going to do using my flowers. I still have some of these flowers left, the nasturtiums. But remember we did some things using the fresh, both fresh and dried, the fresh flowers. I have my tisane behind me, ready to go to make the jelly. With using the fresh wood sorrels. I have, I showed you the nasturtium jelly that I made. That again was with the fresh flowers from the nasturtiums. But today I did a few things with the dried flowers. Here's my vodka. It's just vodka infused with the nasturtium flowers. It's going to stay like this, I think, for 3 weeks, about 3 weeks. And then it's going to strain, and then I can just keep it for this summer if I want to, so that we can do some nasty lime sparkles with our children around the pool maybe this summer. That'd be fun. And also with the dried flowers, my homegrown chili, serranos, peppers, and what else is in here? Oh, and my homemade apple cider vinegar. I have this hot sauce. It's an experiment. I'm trying to see how that goes. The only thing I had to add was a clove of garlic, so I'll let you know what that tastes like when that's finished. Okay. I also did work real hard on the broccoli, getting the broccoli, not only the broccoli soup in the freezer, but the broccoli casseroles in there. I don't have any broccoli to harvest today, but we have a lot more coming, so you're gonna have to stay on that, be vigilant when that's ready to be done and they're ready to come out of the garden. I'll have some room for some of the seedlings that I'm growing. Which every day I'm watching to make sure nobody needs to be potted up or thinned out, sacrifice some of them. Having a few issues with my lighting. I hope it's okay. But anyway, looking forward to spring. And no, sorrow was just around the corner. So spring is ready to spring. Spring is ready to spring. I guess that's what it is. Anyway, thank you for joining me today. Hope you found something interesting. Thanks for watching. I'm Rebecca, and like always, I send you blessings.